The Aurora City Council for Monday, August 10, 2026 is called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Kaufman.
Here.
Councilmember Andrews. Councilmember Bergen.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Coombs.
Present.
Councilmember Gardner. Councilmember Hancock.
Here.
Councilmember Horton.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember Lawson.
Here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Wiles.
Here.
There's no mayor's update. Are there any issue updates? Seeing none, is there any objection from moving the consent calendar forward, item number 2A through 2D? Seeing none, the consent calendar, item number 2A through 2D will move forward. Item number 3A, Notice and Appeals Unified Development Ordinance, UDO, update. Sarah? Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Sarah Weil, and I'm a senior planner in Planning and Business Development Department. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an overview of the work we have been doing related to public notice and appeals, and to obtain your initial feedback as we continue evaluating potential improvements to these processes. So before discussing the project itself, I wanted to quickly go through the role that public notice plays in the development review process. At its core, public notice is intended to promote transparency, keep community members informed, and provide opportunities for meaningful public participation when decisions are being made. As we move through this presentation, many of the topics we will discuss center on how to best balance these objectives with an efficient and predictable review process. So this project provides an opportunity to evaluate the city's public notice and appeal processes for development applications and identify potential improvements for council's consideration. Staff is exploring ways to create a process that is clear, transparent, and equitable for applicants, residents, and decision makers. Potential areas of focus include improving efficiency and predictability for administrative applications that meet adopted code requirements, while creating more meaningful public involvement for applications that require public hearings. Staff is also seeking feedback on opportunities to refine the appeal process in a way that supports fairness, transparency, and public confidence. So this project is currently in phase 3. So we've met with Planning and Zoning Commission, the Development Review Advisory Board, Planning and Economic Development Committee, and now the full City Council to gather input before drafting potential code amendments. Earlier this summer, we also spent time researching best practices and what other communities do for notice, as well as auditing our existing zoning code. If council would like us to move forward with this, we could have the changes adopted in early 2027. So before comparing Aurora's processes to those of neighboring communities or discussing potential changes, we thought it would be helpful to establish a baseline understanding of how the current development review process works. So following application submittal, staff sends notices to all adjacent property owners based on county property records, as well as registered neighborhood organizations within 1 mile of the site. Staff and outside reviewing agencies then conduct multiple rounds of review to evaluate the application for compliance with city requirements and identify any necessary revisions. Some projects also have a neighborhood meeting during this stage. Neighborhood meetings are currently required for all applications by the Unified Development Ordinance, but the requirement may be waived if no comments are received during the initial review period. Once major comments have been addressed, the application moves into the decision-making phase. Prior to a decision or hearing, the applicant is responsible for mailing notices to all adjacent property owners, as well as registered neighborhood organizations within 1 mile, and for posting signs on the property at least 10 days before the date. Currently, the same notice requirements apply regardless of whether an application is approved administratively or through a public hearing. Following a decision or hearing, applications may be subject to an appeal or call-up period. Appeals may be filed by an adjacent property owner within 10 days of the decision, while call-ups require a majority vote of City Council. At this point in the presentation, I wanted to share some of what we've found in our research from other communities along the Front Range. Our team researched zoning codes from Boulder, Westminster, Denver, Lakewood, Lone Tree, Parker, Castle Rock, and Colorado Springs. So this slide focuses specifically on mailed notice, and there is considerable variation on the requirements from different communities. Aurora currently provides mailed notice to adjacent property owners and registered neighborhood organizations within 1 mile for all applications, while most other communities use a fixed distance ranging from 200 feet up to 1,500 feet from the site where there's a development application. In addition, some communities do not notice at all for administrative applications that do not require public hearings. A few communities have expanded notice requirements to include tenants in addition to property owners for some types of applications. So this research demonstrates that there are multiple approaches communities take to balancing public awareness with administrative complexity and cost. Something we would like to explore would be notifying property owners within a fixed distance for applications requiring public hearings instead of limiting notice to only adjacent property owners. We are also exploring changing mailings for applications being approved administratively, since these comply with code requirements and are not discretionary decisions. This slide looks at signposting requirements amongst the different cities. Aurora currently requires sign postings prior to both administrative.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm still on the sign postings, is that right?
Correct.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Aurora currently requires sign postings prior to both administrative decisions and public hearings. Signposting prior to public hearings is a common practice across all of the communities we reviewed, but most cities do not require signpostings prior to administrative decisions like we do. In addition, many cities require sign postings at the beginning of the review process for some types of applications, which Aurora currently does not do. The purpose of signs at the beginning of the process is to encourage engagement earlier in the process to hopefully be able to address concerns early and not at the end of the review process right before a public hearing when many decisions have already been made. So based on this research, one area for future discussion is whether signposting requirements should vary based on the type of application and decision being made. For example, should additional signs be posted for applications requiring a public hearing at the beginning of the process? And should signposting requirements be removed for applications that are being reviewed administratively and comply with all code requirements? Lastly, this slide focuses on appeals of decisions. Appeal processes also vary considerably among neighboring communities. Aurora currently directs appeals to City Council for both administrative decisions and Planning and Zoning Commission decisions, and limits standing to adjacent property owners. Other communities assign appeals to boards such as planning commissions or boards of adjustments, while eligibility to appeal ranges from adjacent property owners to applicants only or to participants in the review process. So as we move forward, your input will help determine whether the current appeal structure continues to be the desired approach. So as these comparisons demonstrate, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to public notice and appeals. At this stage, staff is not seeking direction on specific code language or proposed amendments. Rather, we are looking for initial feedback from council on several key policy questions to help guide our evaluation of potential options and ensure that future recommendations align with council's priorities. With that in mind, we would appreciate council's perspective on the following questions as we continue this work and refine potential recommendations for future consideration. Yep, Mayor, I'm happy to let you lead the
Sure.
discussion as you see
To the
fit.
first question, should staff continue exploring options to update notice and appeals requirements? Discussion on that. Is there any objection to the first one? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah, I mean, this went to PED, so we did actually discuss this. I mean, I'm fine with them continuing to explore options. The appeals requirement, I mean, right now it's adjacent property owners and city council. I know we had a lot of discussion as to why would we open it up to more. As you know, you could have somebody that doesn't even live in the city of Aurora that would want to appeal for whatever unknown reasons. So, but I guess if I would probably be against changing the appeal process, but if they want to continue exploring it, I'm fine.
Okay. Further discussion? Is there any objection to the first one? Good. Okay, second one, should there be enhanced notice requirement for applications requiring a public hearing compared to administrative decisions? Discussion?
Mayor,
Councilmember Hancock.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear. The enhanced notice requirements, are we talking about signage, posting of signage and mailers?
Yeah, so it could be either more signage, so adding signage at the beginning of the process for public hearings, and it could also mean noticing more people instead of just adjacent property owners.
And the rationale would be to give people more time to opine on these things if they had objections?
Yeah, so to give people more time by posting signs earlier in the process for people that don't necessarily meet the qualifications to receive mailed notice. And that would only be for the public hearing applications that are the discretionary decisions.
Thank you
Councilmember
for that
Bergen?
clarification.
Okay.
Yes.
No.
So this is only for public hearings?
So we're looking to see how we can differentiate the notice requirements for public hearings versus administrative decisions, basically because right now they're the same across the board, and administrative decisions are applications that don't have adjustments that meet all the code requirements, whereas the ones that go to public hearing have adjustments, they're large master plans, they're zoning changes, so larger land use decisions.
So you mentioned that these are notices that are mailed also?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to end up spending a lot of money if we are sending out notices to everyone that has an administrative decision. And also some of these, sometimes these applications take a year or two to even go to fruition. So I'm concerned about waste of money on mailings, on administrative decisions, and also signage that could be out in our communities for over a year.
And I just want to clarify one thing. So this would just be for the public hearings, not the administrative decision application. So back in 2025, we updated our code where all site plans are administrative unless they have a conditional use or an adjustment from the zoning code. And so most site plan applications are now going to, are now being approved administratively by the planning director. And so the number of applications, and we could definitely get you data about the percentage that's administrative versus public hearings. But I think probably over half of our applications now are administrative decisions. So from a staff time perspective and mailing perspective, it wouldn't be that big of a difference likely.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I guess I would just have a concern because there are more administrative decisions being made in sub-area C, and then folks kind of find out about them later in the process and then are coming to council later in the process. So I'm not at all opposed to ensuring that for public hearings, there's plenty of notice, but my concern would be, does that mean we're going to be providing less notice or less opportunity for input where there's an administrative decision? And then does that impact some areas of the city more than others?
Sure. So right now, so when we changed our code back in 2025, it made all of the processes the same through all sub-areas. So sub-area A, B, and C all have administrative decisions for site plans if there's no conditional use. and there's no adjustment request. So it would be the same across the city. And I think, when we're looking at best practices and recommendations from the American Planning Association nationwide, really the focus has been trying to get public engagement on processes that are the discretionary hearings, that are the major land use decisions, like the master plans, conditional uses, anything that comes with an adjustment, rezoning requests, those types of things. Whereas if a site plan complies with all of the code criteria that you all have determined should be in the Unified Development Ordinance, that we shouldn't try to seek out additional feedback on those types of decisions because they're meeting all code requirements and can give people have them participate when it might not actually matter in the end decision because it meets code.
Mayor,
Mayor Pro
if
Tem.
I may. So I guess the question I have about that, and maybe this is more of a discussion than a question for you, is that it seems like that would kind of incentivize us to have more items that require a conditional use or otherwise require a public hearing, because there's certainly things that are being administratively approved that we're then hearing from the community, hey, we have a problem with this, or we're in a position where we hear from the community that they don't want something, and then it's not clear that we have recourse for saying no to it. And so I just think from that public input standpoint, like, I don't have a problem with things being administratively approved where appropriate, but I think that pushes us as a council to need to have more conversations about conditional uses.
Councilmember Bergen?
Yeah, just maybe you could give us this data later, just in terms of, you said you're going to look at how many are administratively approved in a year. Could you give us that? It seems like we have a lot of development going through every single year, and just as you just said, it might give people, I'm going to use my own words, a false sense of, being able to change something when it meets all code. If we want to change code, we change code if we don't think it's appropriate. But if it's currently, not a conditional use, I just think it's people are going to think that they have ability to change it or to deny an application when probably they won't be able to, and we would get sued.
Further questions or comments? Is there any objection to moving the second one forward? Seeing none, the second one will move forward.
I object.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Bergen objects. Councilmember Bergen objects. Okay. Item number two, the second question will move forward. Third question, should mailed notice continue to go out only to adjacent property owners, or should the city consider expanding it to property owners within a defined buffer area? Discussion. Mayor Pro Tem.
It seems like it's fairly common across the metro area to have it in a broader buffer area instead of just adjacent property owners. And we have heard a lot from folks who are not adjacent property owners who feel like, oh, this just got thrown down in my community and no one was going to tell me anything about it. So it seems to me that we probably should look at buffers. I don't know necessarily what they would have to be, but we should be looking at those.
Councilmember Bergen.
I would say within reason. We, again, the cost of mailing to those that are not going to be affected by a particular development. So if it's, whatever, what does it mean, a defined buffer area? So I guess that's what we really need to decide on, because we don't want people from, we have a large city, so it could end up being a lot of mail notices.
Okay. Further discussion? Questions? Seeing none, is there objection to moving the third item forward? Seeing no objection, the third item will move forward. The fourth item, does the committee support sign postings at the beginning of the process for projects that require a public hearing? Discussion? Seeing, Councilmember Bergen.
I think I'm fine with it. So those that require a public hearing, so that would be those that have a conditional use, correct?
Yeah, conditional use, an adjustment request, a master plan or amendment to a master plan or a zoning change would be the
Okay, then
primary ones.
I'm good with that. Thank you.
The only thing I'll caveat here on that is, we'll look around this, but as a reminder, sometimes when we get submittals, the project may know and staff may not know that it's going to require a public hearing. We get into a development process before we finally determine that they are going to require a public hearing. So this will sort of have to be a little bit within reason on some of this stuff. Once we determine that a public hearing is going to be required, then we'll do it. Sometimes we know from day one when they're coming in, this is a conditional use, it's going to be required. There's other times that we go back and forth on a number of different reviews before it's like, nope, they're going to need a variance request on this. They can't meet code within plan. So I just want to caveat that when this says beginning of the process, or until we have a reasonable belief that they're going to need that. So just know that when this code adjustment comes forward, we're going to have to allow for some flexibility within that.
Okay.
And may I ask a follow-up?
Please proceed.
So with that being said, some of the process could take a very, very long time, and we really don't know necessarily. Would staff be able to, based on the size of the development project, know if it's going to be like longer than a year? Because you don't want signs out there for a very long time. We'll get complaints from residents just on signage being left out there.
Yeah, so we've already talked internally about having, if you all would like to move forward with the sign postings at the beginning for the public hearings, we've talked internally about having that be a staff responsibility. It's good for us to go out there and look at the sites when we're starting the review on an application, so we could just make it as part of our standard practice that we would go out there, do a site visit, post the sign, and then when we're writing our first review letters and that's being sent to the applicant, we would also go and remove the sign, so it would only be up there during the first review period while we're soliciting public comment on it, and it wouldn't stay up there indefinitely.
Further comments, questions? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving the fourth one forward? Question forward. Seeing none, the fourth question will move forward. The fifth question, should appeals of administrative decisions continue to go directly to City Council, or should another body such as the Planning and Zoning Commission hear them first? Discussion? Now, Councilmember Bergen, our former Planning Commission member, you're recognized.
Thank you, PED Chair, former Chair. I struggle with this one. I think the process that we have now works. So I would probably say to keep it the same.
Very well. Further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving number 5 forward? Seeing none, item number 5 will move forward. Last question, are there any other changes related to this topic that you are hoping to see? Discussion?
Mayor? Sorry.
Okay, Councilmember Bergen.
Oh, okay, so on number 4, or what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, should appeals go directly to, you said no objections, so we're saying it can go directly to City Council? Because I would object. I think it should go to Planning and Zoning. That's what they're there for.
Hold on. So that's not what she said. So, Councilman Berger, you think, and again, from a due process perspective, I think.
Oh, never mind. I just caught what I said.
So, do you want it to go to Planning and Zoning first and then go to Council and still have the option, or do you want to just go to Council directly?
So currently, any appeals go directly to council.
Correct.
Okay, I got mixed up, so I'm fine with the way it is.
Okay.
Okay.
You're fine with how the current system is. So you object to number 5. Just want to make sure.
Yes, I object to it, yes.
Is there further objection to number 5? Okay, number 5, we'll move forward then. Last question, well, are there any other changes related to this topic that you are hoping to see? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, so just in the presentation where it showed that a number of other cities also include tenants of properties, I think that would be appropriate. There are commercial tenants that often want to know what's going on within their places where they're doing business, and then some residential tenants are long-term tenants of their communities. So I don't know that those folks should be, they're our constituents. They shouldn't be excluded from the process.
Very well. Further discussion?
I have one more.
Councilmember Bergen.
Back to the appeals. So if it's administratively approved, that means it met all code, all zoning, all code. So if there's an appeal, now we want it to go back to we want it to go to planning and zoning, and they will basically also go by the rules. That's what they do.
Yes. So administratively, there's no planning and zoning commission.
Right. No,
Okay.
I get that. But
So again, what you would be doing if you move this, if the ordinance comes forward for the amendment to the UDO that says, look, any appeals of administrative decisions went to planning and zoning, right, then that would be the first level appellate of that decision. And if, again, you guys could still call it up, right, if you don't like what the Planning and Zoning Commission do. But generally, what I've seen other cities do is they allow that to be like the first level appeal, because if for example, if unanimous of council agrees that it meets the legal standard, and this is why the administrative decision was correct, then don't come to council and waste all the notices and everything else. So it's again, it's really, as we're stating, it's up to council. It's a policy decision. But it's not it's a good thing, because it does keep some of the, I don't want to use the term frivolous, because everybody who's dealing with their property stuff it's not frivolous to them. But if it meets the legal standard and the Planning and Zoning Commission agrees and you all agree, then you don't have to call it up at that point. They at least get their first line level of appeal.
okay. Thank you for that explanation.
Okay. Any discussion to the last point? Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to see? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Item number 3B, socioeconomic sales and service impact permit. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. So I will just briefly speak and then pass it off to Trevor, who has a pretty detailed presentation. So this has come to council before. There were some questions about the risk terrain modeling, as well as the way that SEPTED is being used at the time when it came forward. And so some information on those items was included in the backup to help address those concerns. And I know Trevor will also speak about those as well. But the main purpose is essentially to allow the city to have some levers to ensure that when we're licensing businesses in an area, that we're promoting a broader mix of business uses in any given area, that we're not having a high concentration of uses that have a tendency to negatively impact health or public safety within that area. Because right now, you submit a business license, as long as you meet the minimum requirements, you get a business license. And it doesn't matter how many similar businesses or other businesses that may be selling products that negatively impact health are present. And there are a number of exceptions as well that Trevor is going to talk about that ensure that we're not unfairly targeting some businesses that have a tangential connection to, for example, alcohol and tobacco sales. So I'll go ahead and pass it on to Trevor to get into the details.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, this item was presented at study session, actually 2 study sessions in the fall, and then the election happened, and we had pulled it off the agenda for further consideration, and are bringing it back for presentation here today. So let me see what I need to do to advance my slide here. There we go. So the intent of this permit is to prevent clustering or new clustering of high-risk businesses and supporting a healthy community. And we'll talk about what we mean by high-risk businesses. These are businesses associated with negative health or financial impacts, and we're talking about when they cluster. In particular, these businesses are lawful to operate and have, but when they cluster in an area, it's oftentimes in areas that can be lower income or in specific strip malls where they're kind of permitted to be there. So we're talking about liquor stores, payday loans, vape stores, that list that I have there. So kind of aggressive financial operations and substances. And then also including late night bars or event centers, hookah lounges in areas of elevated risk, just for additional analysis. So when concentrated, as I mentioned, promoting unhealthy products and those predatory financial services, driving crime, worsening community health, and discouraging reinvestment. We've heard that some high-end retailers, a lot of retailers don't necessarily want to locate in areas with a lot of this concentration. So trying to encourage upward investment and creating perceptions of disorder and decline. So with this, reducing competitive pressures as far as racing to the bottom, we want to try to incorporate some various place-based crime prevention models as part of this and helping to fund that. So broader, more not just policing, but a broader approach, multidisciplinary approach. And then again, encouraging commercial reinvestment, not racing to the bottom, but trying to encourage more upward momentum rather than in some cases, landlords will lease to what comes along and encouraging them to upgrade their premises to attract a healthier retail balance. So the approach to this is to attach it to the general business license. So it's just try to make it really streamlined, just basically a checkbox to the general business license. Primarily, this is going to deal with distance restrictions, spacing these operations out. And providing some additional rules in areas that we designate as elevated risk, which is be part of that risk train modeling where we're seeing that there's a lot of crime and disorder in that area, and trying to make sure that if something's going in there, particularly something like a late night bar or operation, that they're going to help lift the area up and not further contribute to decline in the area. What we would include in this would be convenience stores, but only if they sell alcohol or tobacco. We're going to exclude large format grocery stores greater than 10,000 feet and small healthy grocery stores. So we want to make sure that those little grocery store operations, usually when I go into them, the tobacco is very secondary to what they have. It's kind of just something people pick up when they're in there, or the alcohol have very limited amounts of that. And we want to encourage those to come to these areas where there's potentially grocery deserts. Vape stores, we've talked about this with our licensing as far as tobacco, what the definition of those are. It includes we would actually exclude specialty secondhand shops, but include secondhand shops where there's a high risk of fencing stolen goods. So if they're kind of generalists and you have that risk like a pawn shop, we'd include pawnbrokers in this as well. But those specialty ones would be excluded from this. And then transit stations, we've seen evidence that concentrating these near transit stations helps to contribute to crime and disorder in the area. And then dealing with the high risk after midnight uses. So kind of talking about place-based multidiscipline crime strategies, we're really focusing in on these two here: crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED, which could be a big course in itself, and risk train modeling to help supplement that. Place network investigations is more of a law enforcement surveillance approach, which is not part of this. So we could have a big presentation on CPTED. Thank you, Councilmember Andrews, for letting me do that at Public Safety Committee. But the basic definition of it is just using the built environment to reduce crime and the fear of crime. And it's been shown to be very effective, adopted by ordinance and licenses and zoning throughout the country in various jurisdictions as an approach to improving the environment. So real basic, what is CPTED? These are some of the concepts: natural surveillance, dealing with your landscaping, your maintenance, the lighting, access control, territorial reinforcement, and it is multidisciplinary. So very often, I think you hear crime, you think, well, that's a police item, right? Well, if you're doing it right, you're probably doing it more in the front end. It's a planning item. We've had conversations with Janine about that, and ways of incorporating that when you actually build the environment, because the police are dealing with basically the environment that you created at the end of the process. And so making sure you're thinking about that throughout time. So what SEPTED isn't is it's not necessarily targeted hardening, so not barbed wire or bars on windows. Actually, that would be the opposite of SEPTED because, that's less inviting. We're talking about clear windows. It's not aggressive surveillance. It's not adding cameras. Cameras really aren't necessarily considered SEPTED. They're mechanical surveillance. That's more about the built environment. Cameras are just there. People don't necessarily, they can help. You can incorporate that. As I mentioned, not a policing strategy, and this is from a company that does, this list is from a company that does training for SEPTED, and they talk about it being multidisciplinary. It's not a one-size-fits-all, not hostile architecture, and it's not about controlling people. So it's about having a welcoming environment. Just real briefly, a couple examples of kind of what we're talking about. These are some places in the Colfax corridor that we've worked with for various reasons to help them kind of improve the environment there. When you have the windows, for example, you're less likely to have loitering in front and other criminal activity because it feels different. It feels like you're being watched. It feels more welcoming too if you're in the area. Just some examples of this. We did work with Easy Pond here recently. They were actually pretty good. They got a contractor out. We met with them about making these improvements to this area on Colfax, so they did work with us in this case. These are the types of things we're talking about where, Easy Pond actually had all 3 of these units, but 2 of them looked closed, and trying to make them look a little more inviting with some display windows, fixing some of the maintenance issues. Yeah. So you see how that looks. They even cleaned up the walk there, did a lot of things. They helped take care of that. Here was a liquor store further down Colfax, getting them to actually clean it up, look open. I would think this actually helped their business in some circumstances like this, where you don't even know it's there and may not look great to come into. Whoops, I gotta go back. So when we talk about risk terrain modeling, this is a quote from Joel Kaplan, who's one of the main researchers on it. It helps kind of get your focus in on the areas where you want to focus resources and some of the areas where risk terrain modeling has been implemented and the efforts with that. And talking about what it is. Whoop, I'm just going backwards now. So it's I guess in basics, it's the spatial diagnosis technique. So you feed information into this system, both your business data, your locational data, your calls for service, starts to develop a model of your community as far as where those areas are that you can focus in on. And we're not necessarily talking about policing. These very often will be your hotspots as well. Policing is one part of it, but it actually helps inform your policing in some respects rather than just targeting people. You're targeting issues with the place itself. How do you change the place itself to make it not a place where this stuff happens? We know that crime and violent crime tends to focus on specific areas, and it's not necessarily tied to demographics. There's just things in those areas that cause it to happen, and focusing in on why it's happening there. So these are the locations we'd include in the permit. With risk terrain modeling, we have a fee with the permit to help fund the purchase of that technology to build out that program. And I've talked with police, and they're very supportive as far as incorporating that into their strategies as well. So we've got convenience stores with alcohol and tobacco, and then the rest of the uses there. I don't need to go through all of them, but there's about 360 total.
What is a head shop?
So, yeah, we would probably, I think we're going to classify them as vape shop, but we have head shop because they don't actually sell tobacco. They just are selling the paraphernalia. Yeah, so we have one where they just sell the paraphernalia and didn't have a tobacco license.
Pete's from Texas.
Yeah.
Marijuana's still legal in Texas, so.
I will comment, I was in a community on the west side of the Denver metro area and showing somebody, vape stores, and they commented, it's interesting that where the vape stores are is also where all the illicit massage parlors are in these strip centers, which we've addressed that. Thank you, Councilmember Lawson. So spacing, 300 feet spacing between these operations. So what happens is we do have some spacing, for example, in liquor and our tobacco licensure, but kind of what we've seen is you can have spacing between those, but in the meantime you get, liquor store, pawn shop, vape store, secondhand dealer, and then repeat. And so kind of spacing them out in general, spacing out 1,000 feet from any extended occupancy motel, which I think there's 15 of those, and 2,000 feet between the same type of those uses. So we did that with vape stores. They got to be 2,000 feet apart. Liquor stores are already 1,500 feet. So go back and space those same uses out from one another. 500 feet from any of those major transit junctions, and then we wouldn't apply spacing with those high-risk after midnight uses. They would only be incorporated into this permit process when we determine that that area is high risk because of the risk terrain model and how we would set that out. And so these uses wouldn't be permitted in retail centers exhibiting blight or with 50% or more vacancy. Did I use that right? Okay, roughly. All right. So as I mentioned, areas of elevated risk, determine it through that risk terrain model. And then the high risk after midnight uses, what we'd want those to do is demonstrate that they're using SEPTED and going through their operations plan and financial plan to make sure that they're not contributing to risk in those areas. That's how we would do it for new after midnight uses. And with anything, we're actually using SEPTED. The way we use it in this is it's not required for the permits unless there are violations at that location. So we use it as a mitigating or aggravating factor for license penalties for code violations. And keep in mind, this is just, this was a little confusion in our town hall meeting. This would be just these businesses that we're incorporating into the permit that this applies to, not all businesses. So if there's a pattern of neglect or code violations, this is potentially leading to permit revocation, public nuisance violations, and or if they don't follow their operational plan or they discontinue operations for more than 6 months, then that's when we could potentially revoke that permit. As I mentioned, the permit's going to be basically added on to the general business license as a checkbox. So for businesses, we barely notice it when it goes into effect because it'll be issued automatically. There'll be no application process to it. It'll impact new businesses, and we'll align it to the general business license with the renewal. So when they file their general business license, they'll renew it right along with it. We're looking at $138 biannual license fee to help us pay for roughly $24,000 for risk terrain modeling software, and that's where we'd get funding for that. So some examples as far as the spacing here, you can see the Colfax corridor, roughly a little more than a mile stretch. There's a lot of these operations within that corridor, and we know that that's also an area that has challenges as far as income levels. And so Havana Gardens, here you can see there's roughly half a mile there, and you've basically got a lot less. So that's a very balanced retail environment with a lot of retail there, very healthy retail environment. Hampton and Chambers, this one, you've got multiple smoke shops there on the corners. You've got a liquor store. There's actually a pawn shop over there that you can't see in there. So you've kind of got a lot in there going on at Hampton and Chambers. So a little bit more concentrated in that area. And then Southlands, you can see there's, very spaced out in that area as far as where they, how many things you've got in there. So just some examples of how that goes, and then you can think about how those retail centers make you feel. So with that, that's what I have.
I guess I'll start. I think this is very important to pass this. I think these concentrations of these businesses, I think, create a predatory economic environment. I think that exploits the poor, and I think it extends blight, expands blight. And so, further questions or comments?
Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit as well about the meeting that we did have with business owners and other feedback that we had received from the BAB. So the BAB held a town hall on this, and I think allowing folks to continue operating, including potentially to sell their business and continue operations, was one factor that folks felt more comfortable with the proposal with that provision in it, but also that the stores that primarily sell groceries but may also sell some tobacco or alcohol, that they're exempted. So that's the healthy convenience, so kind of small grocery stores that are somewhat like convenience stores, but really the alcohol and tobacco is not a significant portion of their business. That addressed some of the concerns. And then is there anything else you would want to highlight as far as items that helped address the concerns from the businesses?
Yeah, I think that's the primary ones. Yep.
Mayor?
Councilmember Lawson.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor, for the presentation. So just a question, and I'm specifically just talking about in my ward. I mean, this is great for all over, but for the Hamden and Chambers, for example. So this would be for businesses that want to come into Hamden and Chambers. It couldn't go back to the businesses that are there that are not, doing any type of landscaping, trashing, doing all kinds of other stuff over in that area.
So that could lead to permit revocation. That's where.
With this, or?
With this permit.
With this permit.
So they would
but
get
that's
it.
only for new businesses, not the current ones that are not abiding by certain conditions.
No, it would apply to current businesses as well. Now, they'd be grandfathered in initially, so they'd get the permit automatically, but part of that permit criteria in maintaining it is not to have those repeat code violations.
Okay. How
So
many
they could lose
code
it.
violations would they have to, I guess, not adhere to before some actions would be taken?
So that's going to be a conversation we'd have with them as far as the substantial code violations. There's a reasonable standard to it. I don't know that we could put an exact target on it. What are you doing to get that in order? Because what we want is as you saw the pictures there, we want the business to clean up, be a good part of that area. So there'll be a discussion and something we use to say, hey, if you don't, we've seen this pattern of code violations, it's just another lever to say you could lose your ability to be here, not only for yourself, but your ability to sell your business. And that's very motivating for businesses. And most businesses will the light bulb starts to go on and say, oh my, I need to take care of these issues. And that's really the goal. So it's going to depend on the circumstances. It's not going to be like, hey, you had some paint chips here and you're going to lose your permit. That's what I'm worried about is, there needs to be a review of how serious the violations are.
Basically substantial
Yeah.
things.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or comments? Councilmember Bergen.
Do you give them a certain time then to make, the changes because it could be considerable cost to them?
Yes, and actually with Easy Pond in there, when we contacted them, it took them a number of months to do that. And, it's I think, really easy to work with them when you can see progress and they're sending out a contractor to actually meet and talk with us. And you can see the plans going into it to take care of that. As long as we're seeing that happen, we're very willing to work with businesses. But we know sometimes that it's lip service. And so there is, sometimes we got to discern that and put deadlines on it.
Okay, and then like the one example you had with the bars on the window, so are you saying that those would not be allowed?
No, not necessarily. So it depends, that'll depend on what the, first of all, code standards are. So we want to follow what our city codes are with those. And it's a discussion we're going to have with the businesses. So I think one of the examples I saw was they did put windows in, but they did have bars on the inside. Doesn't look great, but it's a lot better than what it was. And so we're okay. We kind of understand that, particularly with a liquor store, they want some target hardening in there. So again, trying to get to a reasonable point where it works, at least certainly better anyway.
Yeah, okay, well, that makes sense, because when you showed that with the window, and I thought, well, then they don't have bars anymore. Are they going to now experience break-ins? But that, if it's on the inside, that makes sense. And then lastly, you said if they're not permitted in a retail center experiencing blight, or if they have more than a 50% vacancy. So if it's more than 50% vacancy, I get, none of them were ever allowed?
That's correct. Yeah, we wouldn't allow them in a retail center that's experiencing, in this case, some investment issues.
So even if they would abide by making sure that their establishment met our standards?
Yes, so even if that's the case, because what we want to try to do with those centers is encourage, the balanced retail environment there. I think what we've heard from big retailers or retailers, big national retailers, is they don't want to necessarily go in. Some will say we won't locate even next to a vape store. So the issue is it's somewhat limiting for that retail center. And I think what you see with a lot of the professional retail centers is that they won't lease to these uses at all in some cases, perhaps other than a liquor store. But you can see the big retail centers, for example, won't lease to vape stores. So what we're trying to do is not have that cycle continue, because I think what's happening, if you have a highly vacant retail center, and I have an example of one in my mind where they end up putting these uses in it, they are not attracting other uses at that point. It's kind of cycling in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and I get that. But
Yeah.
then if they're more than 50% vacant and they need business, they might just stay vacant forever if they can't get, whatever more desirable business. I guess if they're willing to abide by, all your standards, I just don't understand how you deny someone coming into a retail center when the retail center makes those decisions on who they lease to. So are we infringing on the retail center owner's rights?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, so no, Councilmember Bergen, I'll let Pete opine on the legal of whether we're infringing on their rights. But I think the point is that as a city, we need to have some ability to regulate what goes where, right? And
No, I get that.
the purpose is to, as Trevor explained earlier, not have that race to the bottom. Oh, well, there's vacancy in my retail center, so I'm just going to have whoever wants to come in, come in. And that's so that we're not encouraging those uses that are going to deter other folks from coming in.
No, I get that. And I think, I'm in agreement with pretty much all of this. I'm just wondering if it's like, let's just say it's 67% vacant and you don't allow that business to go even one to go in, so you're just assuming somehow the market is going to react by bringing in something good in a reasonable time frame? Like I can see some of them just staying vacant for years.
Well, and Councilmember Bergen, so if a property owner wanted to bring an issue, right, it'd be looked at. Do we have a rational basis, right? That's a constitutional scrutiny that would be looked at. And we do, as long as we're consistent with how we apply this across the city, which we would. I would say, I think the concern is the rational basis. I think Trevor kind of talked about it is, do we really want, as a property to go, man, I need to get some of these spaces leased, or I'm gonna be losing my lunch. So they just start going, we're gonna have 4 vape shops, right? Come on in, we're good, right?
No, I get that. If you're saying 4 vape shops, I'm talking about just what if they just want to have one?
Well, and that, again, it's once they can get I think what the model is saying is once they can get their vacancy over 50% or less than 50%, they can have one. But they need to be focusing their efforts to lease the spaces to non-SEI operations when they're more than 50% vacant. And I think, anybody could sue us, right? But I think this would meet muster.
Everybody does. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Bergen, I think, I know you're working on a proposal on retail spaces, and for those that are not viable, to some, looking at options in terms of redevelopment. I know you're focused on that.
No, it's good. I just wanted to make sure we're from a legal perspective.
Absolutely. Further discussions or comments? Oh, Trevor? Yeah.
Pete nailed it for me.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Further discussion or comments? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving item number 3B forward? Seeing no objection, item number 3B will move forward. Item number 3C. I got to fix my glasses here. Authorizing 2026 lease purchase financing for heavy fleet vehicles. Teresa Sedmak.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Andrew Jameson, Treasury Supervisor under Teresa in the Finance Department, filling in for her this evening. Here to present the 2026 authorizing ordinance for the lease purchase financing of heavy fleet vehicles. This is a process the city has utilized for many years to acquire heavy fleet vehicles, primarily fire.
To weigh in on some of this, since he and his team worked with us on the drafting. But this is just bringing forward, again, the rules changes that went through the Rules Committee. And then there were some additional changes that I worked with City Attorney Schulte on based on the comments that we had in the last meeting. So one of the concerns was about the travel budgets, that folks not be required to return the travel budgets at the end of the year. So we left in the ability for council members to agree that they can share budgets among other members if they have an excessive amount in their own particular budget. But we took out the part where all in excess of 3,000 goes back to the general fund at the end of the year. So that will revert to, goes back to the general fund at the end of the member's term of service. And that, or the end of the member's service, so not per term, but total service. And then we also went back through the censure and changed it so that in the area where we're talking about the initial censure process, that it would first go to the city attorney to bring to council in an executive session the censure, the grounds for censure, and review the factual basis for those grounds for censure. And a majority of council members will have to then agree for it to go out of executive session and move forward into a regular session. And that's to address the possibility that folks are using this more in a political way, right? That there is no actual factual basis. It's just, we want to be able to say, oh, this person is being considered for censure on X, Y, and Z. So that's to address that concern that was raised, and raised as well the thresholds for both finding a censure to 2/3 and then imposing sanctions with respect to a censure to 3/4 majority. So increasing those thresholds to ensure that there's adequate, that members generally recognize that there's a need for a censure. And then there's some amendments. I received comments from community about potential amendments, but I want to let us talk through these first ones first.
So,
You might go by section like we did the last time. Is that okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
yeah,
Sure, but I think there's a question from.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't want to rehash what we've already decided on. I'd like to just start with where we.
Correct.
I thought
Yep.
we were at censuring. So my question is on the 2/3. Is that just 6 votes then?
So if I may, Mayor Pro Tem, yeah. So let me go through the process real quick. So what it is, and if you look down at the resolution, section 10. Oh no, it's a little further than that. Section 12. If any member of City Council believes that the censure resolution is warranted against another member, the member will contact the city attorney, provide the information and details of the allegations. Right. City attorney shall conduct a review of the information and the detail of the allegations, right? At that point, a resolution is not drafted, right? It's me looking at it going, all right, these are the allegations. Let me look to make sure, A, that there's a legal basis for it. It's a factual basis, and it meets the rules that you all decide upon. So that's number 2. After review by the city attorney in consultations with the member requesting the censure, the member requesting the censure of another member directs the allegations to move forward. So I'll have a conversation with the council member who brings it forward going, hey, these are my concerns, or it's fine. But the next step for me would be to have an exec session and provide legal advice. It would be the legal advice exception in the council meeting on their executive session to go over the request and the legal obstacles, everything else that I would do in an executive session about legal advice. And then if it is the consensus of the city council following that, that the allegations move forward, then I would draft a resolution of censure that would go on the next council meeting agenda. At that point, the resolution will come forward to the regular council meeting agenda. For the censure motion to pass, it must be passed by 2/3. No, 2/3. Just like your current rules. Your current rules require a censure resolution to be 2/3. Now, to impose a sanction greater than public admonishment, it would be a 3/4 vote to get anything more than a public admonishment. You would be limited to 3 motions on the consequences, and if you all can't come up to a 3/4 consensus, the default would be public admonishment. We'd just be listing the resolution forward. So what was the big change is allowing there to be more legal analysis at the front end, where I could come to council under the appropriate privilege under the open meetings law to say, hey, this is where we are. And I think that was what we heard from council at the last time we brought the rules, that, again, as Mayor Pro Tem stated, the weaponization, the politicalization of the censure process, how do we stop that before it even gets started? And that's kind of where that process is.
So that's still my question. So the weaponizing this. So if you only have 2/3, that's 6 council members.
7. It's 7.
Oh, it's 7.
Yeah, because remember, the mayor doesn't, well, it's 6. The mayor doesn't count, because he doesn't, I know, sorry, Mayor. And then the person, the member who is being, the censure resolution is against can't vote. So you're already down to 9. So 6 out of 9 is 2/3.
But yeah, the person being accused can't vote.
Correct, that's what I just said. So
So you lose a vote. Yeah, you lose your vote. So I guess I just don't think that threshold's high enough. I would prefer 3/4. And you could state all your legal reasons, Pete, but if and I'm not saying this council, I'm just saying any future council, that a council could be just like, well, whatever your legal advice, we feel like we're going to go ahead and still draft a resolution, and then it becomes public at that point. So I just think it needs a higher threshold. That's my opinion.
So you would suggest making the 2/3 a 3/4?
Yes.
To pass the resolution?
Yes.
And then
I would hope a censure or any of this is going to be something serious and not trivial.
Right, Mayor.
I'm sorry, okay. I think, what do you mean by sanctions?
So the change in this particular set of rules is, before, if you were censured, it was just a public admonishment, right? You're bad, stop doing that, that was it, right? And of course, some of the feedback we heard from the Rules Committee and some of the feedback we heard from the community was, it was a badge of honor for some, right? Go ahead, censure me, I'm gonna use it as, look what I did, I got censored. So what we did in this particular version is we looked at what are other possible sanctions that council could sanction their other members for misconduct. And one of them is the public admonishment, which is a posting of the past censure resolution in normal locations of the past council legislation, right? The second level is a public reprimand, where it's a posting of a past censure resolution in normal location of past council legislation, along with a requirement for the council member to attend other training or other education, right? I mean, that would be probably something like sexual harassment allegations of individuals, something of that sort. It could be exclusion from attendance at executive sessions of the city council for a set period if the allegation is that somebody was leaking executive session material and it was egregious. Council could say, you're done. You can't come to executive session for 6 months. D, forfeiture of the council member's travel and training budget, either for a set period or indefinitely. E, removal as a chair of a council policy committee. Or F, removal from membership from a council policy committee. So to get something other than a public admonishment, we would go, it's kind of like a criminal trial, even though it's not criminal, but you have the finding of fact, right? If you all pass the censure resolution stating, yes, we believe council member X violated X and we're going to censure this person, you would then move into a second phase of what is the sanction, what is the consequence. And if you all can make a motion of one of those 5 that can pass by 3/4, as this is written, that becomes the consequence. If you cannot, after you only get 3 chances, you get 3 motions that can be brought forward, then it defaults just to a public admonishment like we do now. Okay, so that's the difference. It allows more teeth in the censure process for egregious misconduct.
Councilmember Hancock.
I'm still trying to figure out what would be the threshold for even doing such a thing. What is it? What does someone have to do to be censured? Would that be a criminal? Would that be a financial? Would that be, what would it be?
So what what the code would say is a violation of the city charter, the city code, or rules of the city council by a council member. So not criminal, not state law. This is just about violations of the city charter, city code, or rules. So, I mean, if somebody embezzled a bunch of money from the city, I think, yes, I think that would be appropriate for a censure to come forward. I mean, I don't know, Mayor Pro Tem, help me out here. I don't know what else you guys,
Yeah, I mean, I think for that one, actually, you would, once you're found guilty in a court, you would become ineligible to become a
Correct.
member of council because it falls within the crimes that are
Yes.
included under the state constitution for felonies that can exclude a person from office. So it's not necessarily that, right? It would be abusive conduct, sexual harassment, those kind of things, right? If you're abusing members of the public, abusing your colleagues, or if you're sexually harassing staff members or things of that nature.
So, Mayor?
Yes, please.
So, before I was on this council, there was an issue where someone was brought up for censure, right?
Correct.
Because they either yelled at somebody or called someone inappropriately or something like that. I wasn't here, so I don't know.
right.
So, is that what we're talking about?
No.
Because I'm concerned, to Councilmember Bergen's point, to raise this threshold, because in the polarizing political environment that we find ourselves in, I can see this being retaliatory or, just petty. And I think it really needs to be something serious in order to go forward.
And I would agree
think
with you.
that's
So I will
reasonable
tell
to
you that
expect.
if we had this process as it's proposed now and that past council member censure had come forward, what I would have said to council at the time is kind of what happened in the exec session and the lawsuit and everything else after that, right? About what happened is that what she was accused of doing really wasn't a violation of the charter, right? So I would have said, look, this is not appropriate to bring forward as it's written, because the charter says you cannot direct directors, right? You cannot direct staff, right? And so if you're calling the police chief every day, you're telling the police chief or the fire chief, you must do X. If you don't do X, I'm going to have Jason fire you. And you do that repeatedly, that would be what I would think that council would get frustrated with, right? And bring that level up. I kind of agree with council stating is it should be a big deal. And whatever this threshold is should tell all of you that this is a big deal. And if it's 3/4, it's 7 votes at that point to pass the censure resolution, then it's a super majority of you going, yeah, this conduct is unacceptable regardless of what side of the aisle you're on.
Right.
But that's up to you. That's a policy decision. So we just kept it the same as it was before, the 2/3. And then we raised the 2/3 to 3/4 for the sanction more than a public admonishment in this draft.
I'd almost like to see it go, so you got one phase, the first phase, it's 3/4, right?
It's 2/3 right now,
Two-thirds in the
but
first phase, and then
It's-
3/4 in the second phase.
Correct.
I'd like to see the first phase go to 3/4. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I'm open to amendments. I just think we need to have something in place so that, for example, if people are trying to direct staff outside of the general council process, if people are being abusive to staff, right? Because there are things in the charter that lay out that you're not supposed to be doing that, as well as in the rules. And so that's one of the areas that I think is incredibly important to prevent from being ongoing.
Okay, Councilmember Lawson.
Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry, let me go, Councilmember Lawson, and then,
Lawson first.
Okay, thank you. So, Pete, I mean, I do have to disagree with you about public admonishment just being a badge of honor, because it's not. It's a serious situation. My concern is what, I guess, Mayor Pro Tem, I mean, when you say abuse, I understand about, talking to staff any kind of way, but what does that mean when you say community, you say council members? Do you mean if we're trying to talk about a position, for example? I'm not saying go and hit a council member or anything like that. Definitely, that's out. But if we're getting in a debate and maybe a council member is sensitive to the tone of someone. No, I'm serious.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
No, but you can laugh, but being serious.
Right.
The tone could be considered aggressive. And then they could say, Councilmember Lawson, I'm going to admonish you because you've been abusive to me. I mean, I think there has to be some things in place of what the thresholds are. because I don't think that to me, this is very serious. This is not a badge of honor, even the first one, public admonishment. I disagree. I don't want that on my name at all. So I'm just saying there has to be something to make these thresholds a little bit more defined and sanctions.
So can I
Sorry.
respond a little bit?
Sorry
and
about
then
that.
I'll let Pete weigh in.
Okay.
So again, that's why there's that initial finding of fact, right? Other people have to look at that and not just say, okay, you're being overly sensitive about someone's tone. I'm not talking about tone, right? If you're calling people out of their name, cussing them out, if you're, accusing them of things that are not factual, right? Things of that nature that would be above and beyond just having a tone with someone. And that's, again, both members of the public and members of the council that, we also shouldn't have other people calling us out of our name, but that doesn't mean that if they do that, if a member of the public does that, then we're just free to respond in kind and just start, saying inappropriate things to them. So it's not about tone. We all get heated from time to time. It's about also physically getting in someone's face would be inappropriate. I think we can all agree that you shouldn't go up to a constituent or another member of council up in their face either. So things of that nature, I don't know that it would make sense other than to say what it currently says, right? You've broken the council rules, you've broken the city codes, or you violated the charter, that we now are writing in, all of these, and it has to include this conduct or this conduct, because from a legal standpoint, and I'll let Pete weigh in on this, at some point you create a situation where you can't censure something that clearly should be censured just because you didn't write it into the rules, and I don't know.
Can I just say, I think there has to be.
Councilmember Lawson, then I need to go to Pete.
It's Councilmember Horton.
Oh, I'm sorry.
apologize.
Okay, Councilmember Horton.
Well, can I?
Then Pete. Okay, go ahead.
Let me
Pete.
comment. So real quick. So, and that was part of the process. So let's say that scenario happened, and Mayor Pro Tem came to me and said, "Oh, Councilmember Lawson, she was, she raised her tone." I'm like, and I would say that is not what the censure procedure is designed for. I think whether it's me in the city attorney role or somebody else, I think you're entrusting the person that you've put in as your, your mediator, right, for lack of a better term, to say, look, this isn't going to fly, right? This is not what the censor is doing. Maybe we can maybe I can even work on putting something in the very beginning of the section that says censure is supposed to be for things that you all, a council member, cannot look the other way, right? They look, something happens, so whatever, maybe to that effect, but we added the legal advice section in the front to try to get this where we could talk about the legal aspects of it, because there is a legal aspect to it, right? If somebody gets censured and they don't think they should have been, council member could sue us, right? I mean, they could say, look, this is a violation of not for lack of term rights, but this is a violation of my being a private person, being a council member, and they could go after them. We're going to have to defend that. And so I think that was a very good addition that Mayor Pro Tem asked to put in there, is to have that trusting the city attorney to come in and go, really? And I've done that for many of you over the last 2 years that I've been in this role. It's like, do you really want to do that? Right? And yeah, you're right? So that is my obligation. So maybe we add a caveat at the front that says, this is designed for things that council just cannot look the other way. Other council members look at it and go,
sure.
What? I mean, up to you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just thought maybe that's an idea. Yeah.
Okay, so Councilmember Horton.
The word egregious.
Okay, Councilmember Horton.
Thanks, Mayor. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm driving to the Municipal Center now, so I haven't had a chance to write down, take notes. So Pete, can you just clarify what's currently on the table, what to be amended is that if a censure complaint was to go through, it would first go to executive session?
So what it would do is the council member, let's say council member A wants to bring a censure resolution against council member B, right? I'd talk to council member A, I'd take the facts, I'd have a conversation like I give advice to you individually all the time. And I say, look, I don't think that meets. And then if the council member says, I still want to go present it to council and have you give legal advice on it in executive session, then we would set an executive session. I would come into the executive session. I would say council member A has brought in these allegations. I agree, I disagree, I don't think this should move forward, I do think this should move forward because of these legal reasons, whatever, right? I'm not going to comment on the underlying decision that you all will make, but only if there's a consensus of council. And I will tell you, the mayor, as we're getting consensus, right? We're not voting in executive session, we're getting a consensus, right? If 3 of you are like, yes, let's do it, right? And that's not a consensus, right? And it's not going to come out of the executive session in the form of a resolution later on. If there's, go ahead. Sorry, Councilman Horton.
No. I appreciate that. Thank you for laying it out again for me. I guess my recommendation, if changing it from 2/3 to 3/4, in order to provide a level of more scrutiny, right, for folks to really think through what this would mean, bring something forward, to lessen the political targeting of it, then I would then ask that it would not go to executive session, and that council member A would have to be held feet to the fire in many ways, that if there has to be a third, fourth vote, that it goes, that it is public knowledge, that it's out there, and we skip executive session.
No, that politicizes. I think that politicizes it.
That takes away the ability for consensus of the council to say, because again, I want to be clear, I look at censure, right, from the legal perspective as something that regardless of the political aisle you're on, you can't look the other way about what another council member did, right? You have to hold them accountable, whatever that is. So I think having that threshold where executive session says, wait a minute, this is not meeting that legal threshold under the rules. I think changing it to 3/4 on both protects all what you're talking about, right? It does take a super majority, regardless of political affiliation. Again, you all should be going, that was so egregious, I can't vote no just because they're a member of my political party, right? And that's what we're talking about. So I think my advice is to keep the executive session part as kind of a gatekeeping, right, for politicizing. Change the both majorities to 3/4, and then it takes again almost all of you to hold somebody accountable.
Okay. Further discussion. Is there any objection to moving that first threshold up to 3/4? Seeing none, then that's the direction. Is there any objection to
Section 12?
Moving Section 12 forward? Well, are we prepared just to move the whole thing forward?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Recommended that people provide some language
Okay.
in the beginning of section 12.
Okay.
And when we bring the resolution forward, I'll get with Mayor Pro Tem and I'll put in kind of what I've talked about is that
Okay.
it must be egregious. Councilman Berger, I'll use that word. It must be egregious conduct, right? That anybody who's looking at it just can't look the other way, right? It has to be something that has to be handled. So.
Okay. Is there any, okay, with that, is there any objection to moving Section 12 forward?
Correct.
Seeing none, Section 12 will move forward.
And the only other thing, Mayor, we did change Section 3 where the reports are back down to where they were. First 1 hour of public invited to be heard or students who are 18 years or younger will have priority over the speakers in attendance. And then the second 1 hour at the end, only those people who have not previously addressed the city council during the first public invited to be heard. So I think that was the consensus that we had from the last meeting. I just want to make sure everyone's good with that.
Any objection?
Mayor,
Yeah.
I got feedback from the public requesting that we not make that change to the public invited at the end. And then I also, there's a number of other things that I think it would take a long time for us to discuss. So what I will do is I'll send those as amendments
I
to
thought
the city
we
attorney
already
to be.
discussed and moved those forward.
We have.
We're relitigating these. I think this is a subtle question.
I would just say,
what did we agree to?
You did. You agree with what we put in here. That was what came out of the last study
Okay.
session.
Well, then I don't know why we'd relitigate that.
I agree. If you want to bring amendments to the floor, you can, absolutely.
So I'll send, I received a bunch of comments after
Good.
this got published with our changes
Good.
that we agreed to. So I'll send amendments based on those for consideration ahead of the
floor.
next meeting.
To the
But I'll
floor.
send it
Tonight,
so that it'll
study
be in the
session.
packet
It'd be
since
on
I
it'd
have
be a
it.
regular agenda.
Be on the regular agenda, that's correct. Okay, further discussion. Seeing none, I think, okay. There was no objection to section 12, so we're done. I'm not number 5B. Current,
As amended, so it's 3/4 on both.
As amended.
Okay, good.
Current vacancy on Fitzsimmons Redevelopment Authority, or is it FIC?
I think technically the legal name is still the Fitzsimmons Redevelopment.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, so I had spoken with my colleagues and discovered that we currently are lacking one of our seats on the FRA. The mayor is no longer serving, or the FIC, the mayor is no longer serving on that board, and we do need to have 3 seats on that board to help ensure that we have a quorum. So I wanted to bring this forward to make sure that we fill that vacancy on the FIC. I'm happy to do it. I'm also happy to consider other colleagues interested in doing it.
Okay. Very well. Is there anybody else? Oh, Councilmember Hancock? You'd like to serve on it? Very well. Is that permissible?
I mean, I do think it would be better if it's either Ward 1 or at-large members serving. Right now, we already have the Ward 1 member, so I think it would be better for the other member to be an at-large member because they represent the whole city. Yes, but the members that are at large are elected by the whole city to represent the whole city.
So what do we do if we have a?
You guys, you can vote. If you have Mayor Pro Tem and you have Councilmember Hancock, I would make a motion, whoever do it, whoever.
Are you interested in are you raising your hand because you're interested in doing it? Okay, Councilmember Andrews would be interested
Okay.
in serving.
3, so what's the best way procedurally?
I would, wow, I mean, I guess,
3 just so you guys must vote.
yeah, that's what I would.
I'll withdraw to support Councilmember Andrews.
Councilmember Bergen?
Before people sign up for things, I think you should make it very clear what the expectations are when they meet.
Oh, yep, so.
This is a busy board,
or,
yeah.
No, it's not that busy.
So they generally meet monthly. They've moved their meetings to, I think it's Thursday mornings. I think it's 7:30. It's an early morning meeting, so it's a 7:30 meeting. In person or virtual, you have the option.
Most people do in person, though. Yeah.
You have the option. So it's in person or virtual, and it's, like I said, monthly, and it's an early morning meeting.
Councilmember Hancock?
I currently serve on the HCA board. We meet at the crack of dawn as well. And I've been faithfully serving on that committee for.
I'm sorry, what board is that?
The hospital board for City of Aurora, HCA.
Oh, okay.
And so
Aurora
I've been
South.
and I've been serving on that board for a while, so I understand the commitment to that. And I get your point about, you would prefer someone who is at large, but we all serve the entire city. I often field constituent emails and that from people from all over the city. So the hospital serves the whole city. We all serve the whole city, and I think either one of us could adequately fill that role. So I don't think it should be limited to whether or not you're an at-large member or a ward member.
Councilmember Andrews?
It's just whatever y'all decide is fine with me, but I just want to make that distinction that it doesn't really matter if you're a ward member or an at-large member. We all serve the entire city.
Okay.
I understand that. I agree with that as well. I do have some interest, as I had spoken to you, Mayor, earlier. I had some interest on serving on that board. With that opening, 7:30 works better for me than it does later in the evening. So.
All right, so let's move to a vote.
Okay.
I'll move to nominate Councilmember Andrews. I guess we don't have motions, but I nominate Councilmember Andrews to serve on the board.
Okay, so, and we'll take self-nominations too, because Councilmember. Okay, so what I'll do is, I would move into a vote. Mayor, who supports Councilmember Andrews to serve on the FIC?
Councilmember Andrews. Support for Councilmember Andrews.
Raise your hands, yeah.
Mayor.
Okay, and then you're going to vote for yourself.
Councilmember, you voted for yourself, right?
Okay. Councilmember Hancock.
Horton.
Oh, support Councilmember. Okay, so,
Horton was.
Mayor, I support Councilmember Andrews.
okay, then I believe Councilmember Andrews then will have the appointment. Very well. Seeing no further business before the study session, means adjourned.
15 minutes to eat.